Hello, I'm Suzanne Yates of Wellmother, and today I'm going to be talking about what exactly is Shiatsu. Where does it come from? What does it mean? What are we trying to do with it? So Shiatsu is actually a Japanese word, and it literally means shi is finger and atsu is pressure. In a way it's a bit misleading because in fact in Shiatsu we don't necessarily use fingers so much, we often use the thumbs, but we can also use our forearm, our elbow, sometimes we might even use our knees, and there is a whole style of Shiatsu called barefoot Shiatsu which uses the feet. But basically it's to distinguish it in a way from acupuncture or acupressure. Acupuncture, we're using a needle to work with the meridians or the points, and in Shiatsu we're using parts of our body. So yes, just to clarify, Shiatsu in its theoretical basis is drawing a lot on the Chinese system of meridians, which was developed in China, because China and Japan had a lot of interaction, and so a lot of these aspects of Chinese medicine have been integrated into Shiatsu. Shiatsu in fact originated as a form of massage carried out by predominantly blind people, and it was called Amna. And Amna was more an oil massage, and it became more of just a relaxation therapy. And at a certain point they wanted to make it a bit more therapeutic and draw upon the heritage of Chinese medicine. But of course with Shiatsu, well not necessarily of course, with Shiatsu we're working with the Chinese system of meridians, which I describe in another talk. But there are these meridians, pathways of energy which go through the body, which is predominantly what we're working with in Shiatsu. But it's different from acupuncture in that acupuncture, the needle is acupuncturists tend to work the actual points on the meridians. So the meridians are pathways and they have points on them called tsubos. So in acupuncture, needles are put into the tsubos, and often just a few needles in one session. Whereas in Shiatsu, we do work with the tsubos, although there are different styles of Shiatsu, as with any therapy. So some people use less the tsubos or points, and some people use more. But I would say most forms of Shiatsu, we are working to some extent with the points, so then we would put pressure in the points, as I said, either with our thumb or our elbow, depending on, of course, the area of the body. But also we can be working the areas between the points as well. And so in that respect, it's different from acupuncture. And sometimes even acupressure is tending to be a little bit more with the points. But there are quite a lot of different styles of Shiatsu and acupressure, so I don't want to get too hung up on that. But the main idea is we are working with the Chinese meridian system. We're working with points. We're working with the space between points. We tend to work a whole pathway. So, for example, a nice simple meridian, the lung meridian is along here. An acupuncturist may just select 1 or 2 points on the lung meridian, whereas we would actually work potentially the whole pathway. Longer meridians like the stomach meridian, which starts at the eyes and goes right down to the feet, we don't necessarily work the whole meridian. But of course you can see already when we're working a meridian, we are influencing the area of the body through which it's passing. So we are working the arm or the leg or the chest or the abdomen, so we are working zones in the body as well. So therefore we're working with muscles and bones and blood and the physical aspects of the body too. But for those of you who know a little bit the function of meridians, they are more than just the physical body. So I'm not going to go into that aspect. I'm going to more explain how we work with it and what's the purpose of it. Well, the purpose of it is really like the body, if you think of it in a more physical way, muscles. In order to feel well, we need to use our body. Our body is designed for movement, for activity, and if we don't use our body, we can develop certain areas that are underused or certain areas that are overused, which may express itself as tension. So, for example, we're sat at a desk a lot, we tend to overuse our upper body and underuse our abdominal muscles. So we might end up with tightness in the shoulder, and we might end up with weakness in the abdomen, which might cause backache. This is the simplest way of explaining it. And through these areas there are meridians that are going as well as with muscles. And so this is one of the main focuses of Shiatsu, is to try and get the body that's being a bit overused to understand that it needs to be supported by an area that's underused. And it does work on more of a level than just a physical understanding of the body. Each meridian is linked also to an emotional aspect, a more psychological aspect. If we use a lot the upper body, then we're tending to be a bit more in our head and thinking and in a mental state. And if we're less using this part of the body, our abdomen, then we're less anchored, is probably the simplest way. I refer to this part of the body because this is an important aspect in Shiatsu. This whole area in the centre is referred to as the hara, H-A-R-A. And it's the physical centre of the body. But also in Chinese and indeed in Japanese medicine, the contribution that the Japanese made to Chinese medicine was to really emphasise the importance of the hara and the physical centre of the body. And so this is very important when we work with people. Often we see how engaged, how used, how in connection are people with their physical centre, which of course has an emotional correspondence as well. And we can do a lot of our work with integrating an awareness of here, because it is often an area that is underused in our culture, or an area that people have less connection with. So really, in a way, we could say by receiving Shiatsu, we're helping people to become more aware of what is going on in their body, more aware of themselves, both in a from a physical point of view and also emotionally, because when we touch certain areas of our body, we have an emotional memory within that. We could talk about cellular memory. We have a memory of everything our body has lived, and we maybe develop certain patterns and ways of doing things. And I would say one of the reasons we work with Shiatsu is to open up possibilities to people about different ways of using their body, both in a physical way and in an emotional way. And that's where we could spend a lot of detail on understanding what is the nature of the different meridians, what different emotional and physical aspects do they represent. I'm not going to go into that now, but just to be aware, it's really about bringing more of an awareness into the body, which is going to affect the person in a physical way, but also in an emotional way as well. And that, I think, is really the essence of Shiatsu. We tend to work with sessions that last for about an hour or so. We're giving people space to be with their body, to be with their feelings, and we are touching them. Shiatsu generally tends to be done through the clothes, so people don't have to get undressed to receive this pressure. It's generally done on a futon, on the floor, but it doesn't have to be. It can be done in any situation. And I personally have worked a lot with women during labour. And that's a very different way of giving Shiatsu, especially if I'm supporting someone in natural birth, when she might be standing up, moving around, sitting down on a ball, and in labour for hours. So we can do Shiatsu even in a situation like that. And in fact, it's very effective in that moment, because it's a very physical event, giving birth, as well as being intensely emotional. And so working with Shiatsu can be very powerful for women at this point in their lives. But Shiatsu can be helpful for anybody at any stage in their life. I work with new babies, but then I think the most important thing is to encourage the parents to work with their baby. And so Shiatsu can be done all the way through from when we're born to the end of our lives. It's always helpful because it's always supporting the body to support itself. So as the practitioner, we're not putting anything into the body, we're supporting the body to do what it needs to do. So how do we do that in a little bit more physical way? It's very important in Shiatsu that therefore the practitioner is clear and is using their body in the most balanced. What is balance? The nature of Chinese medicine is that things are constantly changing, so our body is constantly changing. But clearly, for a Shiatsu practitioner, it's very important that they have quite a strong sense of the hara. So we do a lot of exercises to really develop awareness of hara, so we're coming from the centre of our body. So someone giving shiatsu, they are a bit like the needle, as I said, so they need to be clear. We have lots of exercises that we do to really make sure that we are coming from our own centre, from our own hara. Of course, the other important thing is that we use our hands. I mean, we do use our knees sometimes and forearms and elbows, but a lot of it is working with the hands. And so we need to do exercises to really make sure that our own energy flow, we have a good flow in our hands. We can be sensitive in our hands. So there are exercises to develop sensitivity and awareness and circulation in the hands. Because that is what we are putting on the body. That's our primary connection, our hands and our forearms, our knuckles, our elbows, whatever. But we see them very much as an expression of the centre. So the hara is behind the hands, and then we're working with the body. It's very important when we do this that we're relaxed. As I said, commonly in our culture, people have a lot of tension in their shoulders. So giving shiatsu like this isn't so helpful. We can see that's not really enabling a good flow of energy and movement, neither in the practitioner, but that will be transmitted to the person that we're working with. Because as the practitioner, when I start to come in contact with somebody, then I am joining in their energy field, and so therefore I need to make sure that I am relaxed. So this is a key aspect of shiatsu, that while I'm working, I'm relaxed, so that I can work from my hara, so that my own energy can circulate, so that I have sensitivity in my hands, and then I work with continuity and flow. So during the time I'm working with someone, I need to stay connected with their energy system. So then it's very important that we work with two hands. And we have one hand that tends to stay more still and one hand that moves. So we're not giving pressure just like this. We have one hand that's more of an anchoring hand, a supporting hand, and then the other hand is moving. So there is a relationship between the two hands. For those of you who know some of the concepts of Chinese medicine, the hand that's more still is considered the more yin hand, because yin and yang are only yin and yang in relation to each other. So the still hand is the more yin hand. Sometimes we call that the mother hand, that's still, that's the earth, that's connecting. And then the other hand is working. We could be palming. So one of our main techniques is palming along a meridian. But we have to look at the whole body. I'm palming from my hara, and I lean, and then I connect. Then I can work with my thumb, or I might work with knuckles. So palming is a more general, and thumb pressure is a bit more specific along a meridian. But this hand is therefore yang in relation to this hand, and sometimes we call that the child hand or the working hand. I quite like the child, the mother and the child. So the mother's always listening to what the child's doing and assessing the changes as they work along a meridian. So this is one of the key techniques in shiatsu, palming or thumb pressure. But also in shiatsu we do involve some work with stretches and movements. So we can actually open up a whole meridian and support the flow and movement through the meridian. So this is another way that we can work with moving the meridian. So of course you can see in a stretch we're working with muscles as well. We can't isolate the physical body from the meridian system. So in shiatsu we often do include some stretches and movement as well. And then when we end the session, it is very important that we have a definite ending. Often we bring our hands together. It's not really praying, it's just ending. So in fact that's also important at the beginning of the session as well, that we take time to come into connection with the other person. So as the practitioner, as the person giving shiatsu, I first need to be aware of my own energy, and then I can come into contact with the other person. And then we join our energies, because that's one of the main principles of Japanese Chinese medicine, is we are all part of a whole. The human is the microcosm of the universe. The human is the microcosm of the universe, which is the macrocosm. So we're just entering into the space of wholeness when we work with somebody. We're not putting anything in, we're just opening them up to be also in a space where they're part of a whole, and then we come out of that connection with them. We go back to our individual spaces. And so it's important to have a beginning and an end. Quite often when I'm doing this, I focus on the support from the earth, the grounding aspect, which also comes from the hara. The hara needs to be anchored through the legs. So we do need to be aware of the support that we have from our legs, our lower body. And then the hands, we say in Chinese medicine, are more a connection with the heaven. So then all the more yang energy, so we can open up to that. The hands also represent a connection with the heart. And so we can maybe open up, relax, connect, anchor, come into contact with the person that we're working with. And then at the end again, come back to our centre, connected to earth and to heaven. And then we finish. And that's the end of our Shiatsu.